Imagine a quiet evening in a quaint English village. It's the kind where everyone knows your name and secrets are whispered behind lace curtains. You're strolling past a grand old manor, its windows glowing with the chatter of a glamorous party. Laughter spills out, but then a piercing scream cuts through the night. A glass shatters. A woman collapses, her eyes wide with terror, a cocktail trembling in her hand. Was it an accident? Or something far darker? Welcome to the mirror, cracked from side to side, where Agatha Christie's beloved sleuth, Miss Jane Marple, unravels. A mystery that's as chilling as it is clever. In this video, we're diving into the heart of this suspenseful tale, chapter by chapter, peeling back the layers of a crime that shakes the sleepy village of St. Mary Mead. So, grab a cup of tea. Settle in, and let's uncover the secrets together. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss a single twist. Welcome to St. Mary Mead, a place where time seems to stand still, but secrets bubble just beneath the surface. In this first chapter, we're stepping into the world of the mirror cracked from side to side. Agatha Christie's gripping mystery that proves even the coziest villages can hide the darkest crimes. Picture this: neat hedgerows, charming cottages, and nosy neighbors who notice everything, or so they think. At the center of it all is Miss Jane Marple, our sharp-eyed, knitting-loving detective, who's about to stumble into a case that will test her keen mind like never before. Today, we'll set the stage, introduce the key players, and hint at the storm brewing in this seemingly peaceful village. Ready to feel the suspense creep in? Let's dive into the story. St. Mary Mead is no stranger to Miss Marple's quiet brilliance. She's the elderly spinster who sips tea, tends her garden, and solves murders with a mind sharper than a tack. In the mirror cracked, we find her older, a bit frailer, but still as curious as ever. The village itself is changing new. Housing estates are popping up, and with them, new faces. One of those faces belongs to Marina Gregg, a glamorous American film star who's just moved into Gossington Hall, the grand manor once owned by Miss Marple's friend, Dolly Bantry. Marina's arrival is a big deal. She's a celebrity, dazzling and magnetic, but there's a shadow in her eyes, a hint that her past is heavier than her stardom suggests. She's throwing a lavish party at the hall, inviting everyone from village locals to her Hollywood entourage. It's the kind of event that buzzes with excitement and tension. Now, let's meet some key players. There's Dolly Bantry, Miss Marple's old friend, who's thrilled to have sold Gossington Hall, but can't resist gossiping about its new owner. Then we have Heather Badcock, a cheerful, chatty village woman who's starstruck by Marina and eager to meet her idol. Heather's the kind of person who means well but might talk your ear off about her life story. Add in Marina's husband, Jason Rudd, a film director who seems devoted but guarded, and a handful of quirky villagers, and you've got a recipe for drama. The party at Gossington Hall is where it all begins. Picture champagne flutes, elegant dresses, and smiles that don't quite reach the eyes. Everyone's playing a part, but someone's hiding a deadly secret. Here's where the suspense kicks in. During the party, something goes terribly wrong. A woman, Heather Badcock, takes a sip of a cocktail and collapses, gasping for breath. The room freezes. Was it a heart attack? A tragic accident? Or did someone slip something into her drink? Miss Marple, though not at the party herself, hears the whispers through her network of village gossips. Curiosity is piqued, and her detective instincts kick into gear. Why Heather? And why now? The village is buzzing with theories, but Miss Marple knows better than to trust first impressions. She's seen too many accidents turn out to be carefully planned crimes. As she sits by her window, knitting and thinking, she's already piecing together the puzzle, wondering if Marina Gregg's haunted expression holds the key. Let's talk about why this setup hooks us. Christie's genius lies in taking a sleepy village and turning it into a stage for betrayal and murder. St. Mary Mead feels familiar. It's like the kind of place you'd love to visit until you realize someone's watching from the shadows. Marple is our guide, and her quiet strength makes us root for her. She's not chasing clues with a magnifying glass. She's listening, observing, and using her deep understanding of human nature. For example, when she hears about Heather's collapse, she doesn't just accept the surface story. She thinks about motives, about who might have wanted Heather gone, and why Marina Gregg looks so shaken at the party. It's this slow burn of suspicion that keeps us on edge. To keep you hooked, here's a practical tip for enjoying this story. Pay attention to the small details. Christie loves planting clues in plain sight, things like a glance, a word, or a misplaced object. As we go through this series, try jotting down anything that feels off. Maybe it's a character's odd comment, or a moment that doesn't quite add up. You'll feel like a detective alongside Miss Marple. For now, we've set the scene. A village on the brink, a star with a secret, and a death that's anything but accidental. The suspense is just beginning, and in the next chapter we'll dig into the party itself, where a single moment changes everything. What do you think? Accident or murder? Drop your theories in the comments below, and let's keep unraveling this mystery together. The air in St. Mary Mead is thick with whispers after Heather Badcock's collapse at Gossington Hall. The party, meant to be a glittering showcase of Marina Gregg's new life in the village, has turned into a scene of chaos and suspicion. This chapter, we're diving into the heart of that fateful moment, piecing together what happened at the party and why a single cocktail became the center of a chilling mystery. Miss Marple, tucked away in her cottage, is already sifting through the gossip, her mind racing to uncover the truth. Was Heather's death a tragic mishap, or did someone orchestrate it with deadly precision? Let's step into the glitz and shadows of Gossington Hall and find out. Picture the scene. Gossington Hall is alive with music and laughter. The grand staircase gleams, chandeliers sparkle, and guests mingle in a swirl of perfume and excitement. Marina Gregg, the radiant film star, is the center of attention, greeting villagers in her Hollywood circle with a practiced smile. But there's a brittleness to her charm, a flicker of unease in her eyes that only someone like Miss Marple would notice. Heather Badcock, bubbly and eager, is thrilled to be there. She's a local duder, always organizing village events. And tonight, she's practically bouncing with excitement to meet her idol. Heather corners Marina, launching into a long-winded story about meeting her years ago at another event. Marina listens politely, but something shifts. Her face freezes. Her hand tightens around her glass. It's a fleeting moment, but it's as if the room dims for her. Here's where things take a dark turn. Heather, still chattering, accepts a cocktail from a passing tray. It's a daiquiri, icy and inviting, handed to her by someone in the crowd. She takes a sip, then another, and within moments, she's clutching her throat, her face contorted. In pain, the glass slips from her hand, shattering on the floor. Guests gasp, someone screams, and Jason Rudd, Marina's husband, rushes to her side. But it's too late. Heather's gone, her life snuffed out in front of a horrified crowd. The official word spreads quickly. Poison, cyanide to be exact, slipped into her drink. The question is, who did it, and why? The party scatters, leaving whispers of fear and suspicion in its wake. Miss Marple hears the details from her friend Dolly Bantry, who is at the party and can't stop replaying the scene. Dolly describes Marina's strange reaction to Heather's story, that frozen moment when the actress seemed to see a ghost. Miss Marple, knitting quietly, listens and thinks. She knows people don't just drop dead at parties without a reason. Cyanide isn't something you stumble across in a village kitchen. It's deliberate, calculated. But was Heather the intended target? Or was that cocktail meant for someone else? But Marina, perhaps. The actress's haunted look sticks in Miss Marple's mind, like a clue that won't let go. She starts to wonder about Marina's past, her glamorous but troubled life in Hollywood, her string of failed marriages, her enemies. Could someone from that world have followed her here? Let's break down the suspects. There's Jason Rudd, Marina's devoted husband, but devotion can hide darker motives. He's a director, used to controlling every scene. Could he have staged this? Then there's Ella Zielinski, Marina's sharp-tongued assistant, who seems to know more than she lets on. The village locals are in the mix, too, like Arthur Badcock, Heather's quiet husband, who's oddly calm despite his wife's death. And don't forget the Hollywood crowd, a jealous co-star, a bitter ex, or maybe a fan with a grudge. Miss Marple knows better than to rule anyone out. She thinks back to other cases, like the time a seemingly random death in St. Mary Mead turned out to be a carefully planned revenge. History, she muses, has a way of repeating itself. The suspense builds as the village grapples with the shock. Gossip swirls. Some say Heather was too nosy for her own good. Others whisper about Marina's enemies. Miss Marple, ever the observer, picks up on the smallest details. For example, Dolly mentions a spilled drink just before Heather's collapsed Marina's own cocktail, knocked over in a moment of distraction. Was it an accident, or did someone swap glasses? Miss Marple's mind is already spinning, connecting dots that others miss. She knows the key to this mystery lies in human nature. Read. Jealousy, or maybe a secret so big it's worth killing for. Her frail hands may tremble, but her resolve is steely. Here's a tip for staying hooked. As you watch this story unfold, think like Miss Marple. Notice the little things, the way a character hesitates, or a detail that doesn't quite fit. Try keeping a mental list of who was near Heather when she took that drink. Was it a waiter? A guest? Someone who knew exactly what was in that glass? It's these tiny threads that Miss Marple will pull to unravel the truth. For now, the village is on edge, and the poison in that cocktail has cast a shadow over everyone. In the next chapter, we'll follow Miss Marple as she starts digging deeper, talking to the villagers, and uncovering secrets that someone wants to keep buried. What's your guess who's hiding something? Drop it in the comments, and let's keep this mystery alive. Don't forget to like and subscribe for the next twist. The shadow of Heather Badcock's death lingers over St. Mary Mead, turning the once idyllic village into a web of suspicion. The poison cocktail at Gossington Hall wasn't just a tragedy, it was a statement, a bold move by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Miss Jane Marple, our unassuming detective, is already at work, her sharp mind cutting through the village gossip like a knife through silk. In this chapter, we're following Miss Marple as she begins her quiet investigation, poking into conversations, observing behaviors, and uncovering the first cracks in the facade of St. Mary Mead's polite society. The question isn't just who killed Heather, but what secret they're desperate to protect. Let's step into Miss Marple's world, where every word and glance is a clue, and the suspense is thicker than ever. Miss Marple sits in her cozy parlor, her knitting needles clicking rhythmically, but her eyes are distant, piecing together the puzzle. She's not one for rushing about with a magnifying glass or chasing suspects down alleys. No, her strength lies in listening and understanding the hidden currents of human nature. She knows St. Mary Mead like the back of her hand, its rhythms, its quirks, its secrets. And right now, the village is buzzing with nervous energy. Heather's death has everyone on edge. From the postmistress who spreads rumors faster than letters to the vicar who's suddenly preaching about forgiveness, a bit too earnestly. Like Miss Marple starts by visiting her friend Dolly Bantry, who's still shaken from the party. Over tea and scones, Dolly spills every detail she can remember, and Miss Marple listens, her gentle questions coaxing out more than Dolly realizes. Dolly's account paints a vivid picture. She describes the crowd at Gossington Hall, the villagers, awkward in their Sunday best, mingling with Marina Gregg's glamorous Hollywood set. There was tension in the air, Dolly says, like a storm waiting to break. She recalls Marina's strange moment of stillness. When Heather was talking, a look Dolly can only describe as doomed. Miss Marple files this away, wondering what Heather said to trigger such a reaction. Was it her story about meeting Marina years ago? Or something else? Something Heather didn't even know was dangerous. Then there's the spilled drink, Marina's own cocktail, knocked over just before Heather took her fatal sip. Miss Marple's mind lingers on this. Was it a clumsy accident or a deliberate switch? Cyanide doesn't just appear in a glass. By chance, someone placed it there, and they were close enough to hand it to Heather. Miss Marple decides to take a walk through the village, her frail figure leaning on a stick, her eyes missing nothing. She stops by the post office, where Mrs. Mead, the postmistress, is eager to share her theories. Heather was always poking her nose where it didn't belong, Mrs. Mead says, her voice low and conspiratorial. Maybe she heard something she shouldn't have. Miss Marple nods, encouraging the gossip, but she's thinking about motives. Heather was well-meaning but talkative, the kind of woman who might stumble onto a secret without realizing its weight. Could she have overheard something at the party? Or was her death a mistake, meant for someone else like Marina herself? The actress's haunted expression keeps circling back in Miss Marple's thoughts, a clue that feels like the key to the whole mystery. Next, Miss Marple visits the Badcock household, where Arthur Badcock, Heather's widower, is quietly grieving. Or is he? Arthur is a reserved man, a gardener by trade, with hands calloused from work and eyes that don't quite meet hers. He speaks fondly of Heather, but there's a stiffness to his words, a hesitance that makes Miss Marple wonder. She notices a photograph on the mantelpiece, Heather and Arthur at a village fete, smiling, but with a distance between them. She loved meeting Marina, Arthur says, almost too quickly. It was her dream. Miss Marple smiles, but her mind is racing. Was Heather's admiration for Marina a motive for someone else? Jealousy, perhaps? Or was Arthur hiding something about his wife's final moments? The investigation takes a darker turn when Miss Marple learns from Dolly that the police have confirmed the poison was cyanide, likely mixed into the daiquiri at the party. Cyanide is fast, brutal, and leaves little room for error. Whoever used it knew what they were doing. The police, led by Inspector Craddock, are questioning everyone who was near Heather, but they're hitting walls. The tray of drinks was passed around freely, and no one can pinpoint who handed Heather her glass. Miss Marple, however, isn't discouraged. She thinks about the party's chaos guests, milling about, waiters weaving through the crowd, glasses clinking. It would have been easy for a careful hand to slip something into a drink, but it would have taken nerve. She recalls a case from years ago, a poisoning at a garden party where the killer used distraction to their advantage. Could this be similar? To deepen the suspense, let's consider the other players. There's Ella Zielinski, Marina's assistant, who is seen hovering near the drinks table before Heather's collapse. Ella's sharp, efficient, and fiercely loyal to Marina, but there's a coldness to her that Miss Marple finds unsettling. Then there's Jason Rudd, Marina's husband, who was quick to comfort his wife after the tragedy, but seemed almost too composed. And what about the Hollywood guests? The fading actress, Margot Bence, was at the party, her resentment toward Marina barely hidden. Miss Marple knows envy can be a powerful motive, especially in a world as cutthroat as show business. She also hears whispers of Marina's troubled past failed marriages, a nervous breakdown, rumors of a child given up long ago. Could any of these threads connect to Heather's death? As Miss Marple pieces things together, she starts to see St. Mary Mead in a new light. The village, with its charming cottages and nosy neighbors, is a perfect stage for deception. Watching everyone else, but no one saw the killer, or did they? She thinks about human nature, how people hide their true selves behind smiles and small talk. For example, she remembers Mrs. Mead's comment about Heather poking her nose into things. Was Heather's chatter a threat to someone? Or was her death a warning, a way to silence a bigger secret? Miss Marple's instincts tell her Marina Gregg is at the heart of this, not as a suspect, but as a magnet for the killer's motives. That frozen look at the partyites, like Marina saw her own fate in Heather's story. Here's a tip to keep you engaged. Start thinking like Miss Marple. When you hear a detail like Marina's reaction or the spilled drink, ask yourself, what's behind it? Try picturing the party in your mind. Who was standing where? Who looked nervous? Who slipped out of sight? Write down one or two clues that stand out to you, like the name of a suspect or a moment that feels off. It'll make you feel like you're solving the case alongside her. The suspense is building, and Miss Marple's just getting started. She's already planning her next move, talking to more villagers, maybe even getting closer to Marina herself. In the next chapter, we'll dive into Marina Gregg's world, where the glamour of Hollywood hides secrets dark enough to kill for. Who do you think is the most suspicious so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep unraveling this mystery together. Like and subscribe to stay with us for the next chilling twist. The mystery of Heather Badcock's death has St. Mary Mead gripped by a quiet dread, and Miss Jane Marple is steadily unraveling the threads of this chilling puzzle. The poisoned cocktail at Gossington Hall wasn't just a random act, a piece of a larger, darker picture, and all signs point to Marina Gregg, the glamorous film star whose arrival has stirred the village. In this chapter, we're stepping into Marina's world, peeling back the layers of her Hollywood past to uncover secrets that might explain why death followed her to St. Mary Mead. Miss Marple, with her knack for seeing through facades, is homing in on the actress's haunted expression at the party, sensing it holds the key to the murder. The suspense is tightening. Let's dive into the glitz, the pain, the hidden motives swirling around Marina Gregg. Marina Gregg is no ordinary newcomer. She's a star, the kind whose face has graced movie posters and magazine covers. Her name synonymous with drama and allure. But beneath the sparkle, there's a fragility that Miss Marple can't ignore. At the party, when Heather Badcock was chattering about meeting Marina years ago, something snapped in the actress's demeanor. A moment of shock, like she'd seen a ghost. Miss Marple, piecing together scraps of gossip from Dolly Bantry and other villagers, knows this reaction is no coincidence. She decides to dig deeper, using her subtle charm to coax out stories about Marina's life before St. Mary Mead. Over a cup of tea with Mrs. Bantry, Miss Marple learns that Marina's past is a tapestry of triumphs and tragedies, each one a potential motive for murder. Let's paint the picture of Marina's life. Born in poverty, she clawed her way to stardom through talent and sheer will, but the spotlight came at a cost. Multiple marriages, each one crumbling under the weight of her career. A nervous breakdown that sent her into seclusion years ago. Whispers of a child, perhaps adopted out or lost, that she never speaks of, and enemies plenty of them. Hollywood is a viper's nest, and Marina's success left a trail of jealous rivals, spurned lovers, and bitter colleagues. Miss Marple wonders if one of these ghosts from her past has followed her to Gossington Hall. Could Heather's death be tied to something Marina adored, something done to her? The actress's frozen moment at the party suggests she saw something in Heather's story that struck a nerve. And Miss Marple is determined to find out what to get closer to the truth. Miss Marple pays a visit to Gossington Hall, ostensibly to admire Marina's rose garden. The actress, gracious but guarded, welcomes her, but there's a strain in her smile. Jason Rudd, her husband, hovers nearby, his protectiveness bordering on control. Miss Marple, ever observant, notices the way Marina's hands tremble slightly, the way her eyes dart to the shadows. During their chat, Marina speaks vaguely of her Hollywood days, mentioning old friends and foes with a practiced laugh. But when Miss Marple gently brings up the party, Marina's composure falters. "It was dreadful," she murmurs. "Poor Heather. Could have been anyone." The words hang in the air, and Miss Marple wonders, was Marina the real target? Or does she know who the killer is and fear they'll strike again? The investigation deepens as Miss Marple pieces together more clues. She learns from Dolly that Heather's story at the party was about meeting Marina at a charity event years ago, when Heather, a devoted fan, pushed through a crowd to get her autograph. It's a harmless anecdote, or is it? Miss Marple's mind goes to work, considering what might have made Marina freeze. Was there something specific in Heather's story, a detail, a name, a memory that triggered such a reaction? She thinks about cyanide, a poison that requires planning and access. It's not something a villager would have lying around, but someone from Marina's world, a film set, perhaps, where chemicals are common might. The idea of a Hollywood connection grows stronger, and Miss Marple starts to suspect the killers. Motive lies in Marina's past, not Heather's. Let's look at the suspects circling Marina. Jason Rudd, the devoted husband, is a film director with a reputation for ruthlessness. He's fiercely protective of Marina, but is it love or something more controlling? Then there's Ella Zielinski, the assistant, whose sharp eyes miss nothing and whose loyalty to Marina seems tinged with resentment. Miss Marple also hears about Margot Bentz, the photographer at the party, whose career was overshadowed by Marina's rise. Margot's bitter glances didn't go unnoticed, and her knowledge of chemicals from her darkroom work raises questions. And what about the villagers? Arthur Badcock, Heather's husband, seems too quiet, too detached. Could he have known something about Heather's encounter with Marina that made her a threat? Each suspect is a piece of the puzzle, and Miss Marple knows the truth lies in how they connect to Marina's shadowed history. The suspense thickens as new details emerge. Miss Marple hears a rumor from the village baker about a strange visitor. To St. Mary Mead, just before the party, a man seen near Gossington Hall, someone who didn't belong. See a hired hand, sent to deliver the poison. Or a figure from Marina's past, come to settle a score. She also learns that Marina has been receiving anonymous letters, cryptic notes hinting at secrets she thought were buried. These letters, mentioned in passing by Dolly, suggest someone is taunting Marina, perhaps pushing her toward a breakdown. Miss Marple recalls a case from her youth where poison pen letters led to a murder, and she wonders if history is repeating itself. The village feels like a pressure cooker, with every conversation laced with fear that the killer is still watching. To keep you hooked, here's a detective's tip. Focus on Marina's reaction at the party. That moment of frozen terror is a neon sign pointing to the heart of the mystery. Try imagining what Heather said that hit Marina so hard. Was it a name? A place? Secret Marina thought was long forgotten? Jot down your theories and see if you can spot the next clue before Miss Marple does. The beauty of this story is how Christie hides the truth in plain sight, daring you to see it. For now, Marina's past is a maze of broken dreams and hidden enemies, and Miss Marple is navigating it with her quiet brilliance. In the next chapter, we'll follow her as she digs into the Hollywood connection, chasing a lead that takes her closer to the killer's motive. Who do you think is behind those anonymous letters? Drop your guesses in the comments, and let's keep this mystery unraveling. Like and subscribe to catch the next twist in this deadly tale. The poison that claimed Heather Badcock's life has cast a long shadow over St. Mary Mead, and Miss Jane Marple is zeroing in on the heart of the mystery. The clues are pointing toward Marina Gregg, the enigmatic film star whose haunted expression at the Gossington Hall party betrayed a secret buried in her past. In this chapter, we're diving deep into the Hollywood connection, exploring the glittering yet cutthroat world Marina left behind and how it might hold the key to the murder. Miss Marple, with her unerring knack for spotting the truth in the smallest details, is piecing together a trail that leads from the village to the distant studios of Los Angeles. The suspense is mounting, and every step brings us closer to a killer who's playing a deadly game. Let's follow Miss Marple as she unravels the threads of jealousy, betrayal, and revenge that tie St. Mary Mead to Tinseltown. Miss Marple sits by her window, her knitting needles moving steadily, but her mind is far from the quiet village. She's thinking about Marina Gregg's past, a life of fame, heartbreak, and secrets that seem to have followed her to Gossington Hall. The actress's frozen moment at the party, when Heather Badcock shared her story of meeting Marina years ago, is a puzzle piece that won't let go. Miss Marple knows that reaction wasn't random. It was a glimpse into a wound that's still raw.
What?
To dig deeper, she relies on her network of gossips, Dally Bantry, the postmistress, even the vicars. Wife who've picked up snippets about Marina's Hollywood days. But Miss Marple also knows she needs more than village rumors. She needs to understand the world Marina came from. A world where ambition and envy can turn deadly. Marina's Hollywood story is one of dazzling highs and crushing lows. She rose from obscurity to become a silver screen icon, starring in films that packed theaters and broke hearts. But fame came with a price. Marriages 5, by some count, ended in scandal or sorrow. There were feuds with co-stars, directors, and producers, each one leaving a scar. Miss Marple learns from Dolly, who's been reading old gossip magazines, that Marina once had a bitter rivalry with Lola Brewster, another actress who never forgave Marina for stealing a role that launched her to stardom. Lola was at the party, her smile tight and her eyes sharp with resentment. Could she have slipped cyanide into a drink aiming to hurt Marina, but hitting Heather instead? Miss Marple files this away, knowing envy can fester for years. Then there's the matter of Marina's breakdown. Years ago, after a string of flops and a messy divorce, Marina vanished from the public eye, rumored to have spent time in a sanatorium. Whispers of a lost child, a baby given up for adoption, are taken from her swirl in the gossip, though no one knows the truth. Miss Marple wonders if Heather's story at the party touched on this secret. Perhaps Heather, in her eager chatter, mentioned something, a name, a date, a place that brought Marina's past crashing back. The old spinster thinks about human nature, how a single memory can ignite fear or rage. She recalls a case in St. Mary Mead where a long-buried secret led to murder, and she suspects this case is no different. To get closer to the truth, Miss Marple enlists the help of her nephew, Raymond West, a writer with connections in the literary world. Raymond, always a bit amused by his aunt's sleuthing, agrees to make discreet inquiries about Marina's Hollywood circle. He comes back with a gold mine, stories of a disgruntled producer, Ardwick Fenn, who lost a fortune when Marina walked away from a film project, and a screenwriter, Haley Preston, who was humiliated when Marina rewrote his script. Both were at the party, mingling with the villagers, their polished smiles hiding old grudges. Miss Marple's mind sharpens. Cyanide, she knows, isn't a village poison. It's something you'd find on a film set where chemicals for special effects are common. Could one of these Hollywood players have brought death to St. Mary Mead? The suspense deepens as Miss Marple revisits the party in her mind, reconstructing the scene. The tray of cocktails, passed around by waiters, was a perfect opportunity for a killer. She thinks about the spilled drink, Marina's own cocktail, knocked over just before Heather's collapse. Was it a clumsy accident, or a calculated move to swap glasses? She learns from Dolly that Ella Zielinski, Marina's assistant, was near the drinks table, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. Ella's loyalty to Marina is fierce, but Miss Marple senses a brittleness in her, a hint of something unspoken. Could Ella have acted to protect Marina or to hurt her? Then there's Jason Rudd, Marina's husband, whose calm demeanor at the party now seems almost too perfect. Miss Marple wonders if his devotion hides a darker agenda, perhaps tied to Marina's wealth or reputation. A new clue emerges when Miss Marple hears about the anonymous letters Marina has been receiving. Dolly, who got the tidbit from a maid at Gossington Hall, says the letters are typed, cryptic, and menacing, hinting at a secret Marina thought was buried. One line sticks out, "The mirror cracks, and so will you." The phrase chills Miss Marple, reminding her of Tennyson's poem, The Lady of Shalott, where a mirror cracks as a curse takes hold. It's the killer taunting Marina, pushing her toward another breakdown? Or are the letters a distraction meant to throw suspicion elsewhere? Miss Marple thinks about the strange visitor seen near Gossington Hall. Before the party, a man who didn't belong. Is he delivering these letters, or something more lethal? The village itself is a pressure cooker now. At the local pub, Miss Marple overhears hushed talk about Heather's death. Some say she was too nosy, always prying into others' lives. Others whisper about Arthur Badcock, her husband, who's been seen tending his garden with an eerie calm. Miss Marple visits Arthur again, noticing a new detail. A bottle of weed killer in his shed. A chemical that could, in the right hands, be linked to cyanide. She doesn't accuse him outright, but her gentle questions leave him flustered. There didn't have enemies, he insists, but his eyes flicker with unease. Miss Marple wonders if he's protecting someone or hiding his own guilt. Let's pause on the suspects. Lola Brewster, the rival actress, has motive and opportunity, her bitterness toward Marina palpable. Ardwick Fenn, the producer, lost money and pride, and his presence at the party feels too convenient. Haley Preston, the screenwriter, might have seen Heather's death as a way to send Marina a message. Ella Zielinski, always at Marina's side, knows more than she says. And Jason Rudd, his love for Marina mask a need to control her, or even destroy her. Miss Marple knows the killer is close, hiding behind a perfect facade, she thinks. About Hollywood, where everyone plays a role, and St. Mary Mead, where nosy neighbors see more than they realize. The truth, she senses, lies in the overlap of these worlds. Here's a tip to keep you in the detective seat. Focus on the anonymous letters. That poetic line, "The mirror cracks, and so will you," is a deliberate clue, dripping with intent. Try thinking about who in Marina's circle might know her well enough to use such a taunt. Is it someone from her Hollywood past, or a villager with a hidden grudge? Write down one suspect and one motive that feels plausible and see if you can connect it to Heather's story at the party. A suspense is building and Miss Marple's closing in. In the next chapter, we'll follow her as she zeroes in on Heather's past, digging into what the village woman might have known nor said that made her a target. Who's your top suspect now? Drop it in the comments, and let's keep chasing this killer together. Like and subscribe to stay locked in for the next twist in this deadly mystery. The mystery in St. Mary Mead grows darker with every passing day as the poison that killed Heather Badcock at Gossington Hall continues to cast a sinister shadow. Jane Marple, with her quiet wisdom and relentless curiosity, has been peeling back the layers of Marina Gregg's Hollywood past, but now her focus shifts to the victim herself. Heather Badcock, the cheerful, talkative villager, seemed an unlikely target for murder, yet she's dead, and Miss Marple knows there's more to her story than meets the eye. In this chapter, we're diving into Heather's life, exploring her connections, her habits, and the seemingly harmless anecdote she shared with Marina at the party. Could Heather have stumbled onto a secret so dangerous it cost her life? The suspense is tightening like a noose. Let's follow Miss Marple as she uncovers the hidden depths of a woman everyone thought they knew. Heather Badcock was the kind of person St. Mary Mead loved and occasionally sighed over. She was a do-gooder, always organizing village fetes, running the Women's Institute, and chatting with anyone who'd listen. To most, she was open, friendly, and a bit overwhelming with her endless stories. But Miss Marple, sitting in her parlor with her knitting, knows that even the most ordinary people can hide secrets or stumble into them. Heather's death by cyanide was no accident. It was a calculated act, and Miss Marple suspects the key lies in what Heather said or knew. That moment at the party, when Heather's chatter about meeting Marina years ago froze the actress in her tracks, is the thread Miss Marple is tugging. Was Heather's story as innocent as it seemed, or did it carry a hidden sting? To dig deeper, Miss Marple starts with the village grapevine. She visits Mrs. Hartnell, a sharp-tongued member of the Women's Institute, who knew Heather well. Over a pot of tea, Mrs. Hartnell describes Heather as well-meaning, but dreadfully nosy. She recalls Heather's excitement about the party, how she'd bragged about meeting Marina at a charity event in Bermuda years ago. She went on and on about it, Mrs. Hartnell says, rolling her eyes. Said she was sick with the flu but got out of bed just to see Marina. Practically pushed through the crowd for that autograph. Miss Marple nods, her mind latching onto that detail. Sick with the flu. It's a small thing, but to Miss Marple, small things are often the cracks where truth seeps through. She wonders if Heather's story stirred a memory in Marina that wasn't just nostalgic but dangerous next. Miss Marple calls on Cherry Baker, the young woman who helps with her housework and has a knack for picking up village gossip. Cherry, with her sharp ears and modern outlook, shares what she's heard about Heather's life. Heather was devoted to her husband, Arthur, but their marriage wasn't without its strains. Arthur, a quiet gardener, often seemed overshadowed by Heather's energy. Cherry mentions a rumor that Heather had been asking questions about Gossington Hall before the party, curious about Marina's Hollywood friends and their lavish lifestyle. She was fascinated by Marina, Cherry says, kept saying how glamorous it all was, but I reckon she was fishing for something juicy. Marple's eyes narrow. Is Heather's curiosity innocent, or did she uncover something she shouldn't have? The investigation takes a darker turn when Miss Marple revisits Arthur Badcock. She finds him in his garden, pruning roses with a focus that feels almost too deliberate. She asks gentle questions about Heather, probing for anything unusual in her final days. Arthur is polite but guarded, saying Heather was thrilled to meet Marina again. But Miss Marple notices a tremor in his hands when she mentions the Bermuda story. She loved telling that tale, he says, his voice flat. Nothing special about it, but Miss Marple isn't convinced as she spots that bottle of weed killer in his shed again. Its label faded but ominous. Cyanide can be derived from certain chemicals, she knows, and while Arthur seems an unlikely killer, she's learned never to dismiss anyone. Could he have been jealous of Heather's obsession with Marina? Or is he protecting someone else's secret? The suspense deepens as Miss Marple pieces together Heather's final moments. She learns from Dolly Bantry that Heather was standing near Marina when she took the fatal cocktail, close enough for their glasses to be confused. The spilled drink, Marina's own daiquiri, knocked over in that moment of shock, keeps nagging at Miss Marple. Was it a mistake? Or did someone ensure Heather got the poisoned glass? She thinks about the party's chaos, waiters moving through, the crowd, guests, laughing and jostling, hands passing drinks. It would have taken only a moment for a skilled killer to slip cyanide into a glass, but who was close enough? Ella Zielinski, Marina's assistant, was near the drinks table, her sharp efficiency masking a calculating mind. Jason Rudd, always at Marina's side, could have acted in a flash. Even Lola Brewster, the rival actress, was seen hovering nearby, her smile too tight to be genuine. A new clue emerges when Miss Marple hears about a conversation Heather had at the village shop days before the party. The shopkeeper, Miss Weatherby, recalls Heather mentioning a funny coincidence about her Bermuda trip. She'd met someone else there, someone connected to Marina, but Heather clammed up when pressed for details. Was this coincidence tied to Marina's frozen moment? She thinks about Marina's past, her breakdown, her lost child, her enemies. Could Heather have met someone in Bermuda who knew Marina's secret? Perhaps a doctor, a nurse, or even a family member tied to that mysterious child? The anonymous letters Marina's been receiving, their cryptic taunts about a cracked mirror, suggest someone is playing a long game, and Heather might have been an unwitting pawn. Miss Marple reflects on human nature, how people reveal themselves in small ways. She remembers a case where a chatty villager's careless remark led to a killer's undoing. Heather's talkativeness could have made her a target, someone who said too much or knew too much without realizing it. The Bermuda story is the key. Miss Marple senses, but it's tangled in Marina's past. She thinks about the Hollywood suspects. Ardwick Fenn, the producer who lost a fortune. Haley Preston, the humiliated screenwriter. Lola Brewster, burning with jealousy. Any of them could have seen Heather as a threat or as a way to hurt Marina, but Miss Marple also considers the villagers. Arthur Badcock's calm demeanor feels off, like a mask that's starting to slip. And what about the strange visitor scene near Gossington Hall? Was he a courier for those letters or something more sinister? The village is a cauldron of tension now. At the church hall, Miss Marple overhears whispers about Heather's death, some calling it a curse on Marina's arrival. The vicar, trying to calm the flock, speaks of forgiveness, but his words falter when he mentions the party. Miss Marple notices his unease, wondering if he knows more than he's saying. She also learns that Inspector Craddock, the detective, on the case, is frustrated. The police have questioned everyone at the party, but the trail is cold. No fingerprints on the glass, no clear suspect. Miss Marple, however, thrives on cold trails. She knows the truth is in the details. A glance, a hesitation, a story told too often. Heather's Bermuda anecdote is her focus now. She's determined to unravel its meaning. Here's a tip to keep you hooked. Zero in on Heather's story about Bermuda. That funny coincidence she mentioned could be the spark that set this murder in motion. Try imagining what she might have seen or heard during that trip. Maybe a face, a name, or a secret tied to Marina's past. Write down one detail you think is suspicious, like Arthur's reaction or the spilled drink, and see if you can link it to the bigger picture. The suspense is electric, and Miss Marple's getting closer to the truth. In the next chapter, we'll follow her as she digs into the anonymous letters, chasing a trail of cryptic clues that point to the killer's mind. Who do you think Heather met in Bermuda? Drop your theories in the comments, and let's keep this mystery alive. Subscribe to catch the next chilling twist. The poison that killed Heather Badcock has left St. Mary Mead reeling, and Miss Jane Marple is weaving through a maze of clues, each one pointing to a deeper, darker truth. The focus on Marina Gregg's haunted past and Heather's seemingly innocent story has brought Miss Marple closer to the killer. But a new piece of the puzzle demands her attention. The anonymous letters tormenting Marina. These cryptic notes with their chilling reference to a cracked mirror suggest a mind bent on psychological warfare. In this chapter, we're diving into the mystery of these letters, following Miss Marple as she traces their origins and unravels their meaning. Is the killer taunting Marina, or is this a clever distraction to throw suspicion elsewhere? The suspense is suffocating. Let's step into the shadows with Miss Marple and hunt for the truth. Miss Marple sits in her cozy parlor, her knitting needles clicking softly, but her mind is racing. The anonymous letters, mentioned in passing by, Dolly Bantry are no idle gossip. They're a deliberate act laced with malice, and Miss Marple knows they're tied to Heather's murder. She recalls Dolly's description, typed notes, delivered to Gossington Hall, with phrases like "the mirror cracks," and "so will you." The reference to Tennyson's The Lady of Shalott is striking a poem about a curse, a shattered mirror, and a doomed woman. To Miss Marple, this isn't just poetic flair. It's a clue to the killer's mindset. Is Marina the target meant to break under fear, or was Heather's death the first move in a larger plan? Miss Marple's instincts tell her the letters are the killer's voice, and she's determined to decode it. To start, Miss Marple visits Dolly Bantry again, knowing her friend's knack for picking up details others miss. Over tea, Dolly reveals more about the letters. The maid at Gossington Hall, a nervous girl named Gladys, found them slipped under the door or tucked into Marina's mail. There have been 3 so far, each one typed, unsigned, and dripping with menace. One hinted at a secret buried long ago, another warned, "The past never stays dead." Dolly says Marina's been shaken, her nerves fraying with each note. Jason Rudd, her husband, has tried to keep them from her, but Marina's seen enough to grow paranoid. Miss Marple listens, her mind turning. Typed letters suggest calculation, someone who wants to hide their handwriting, but who has access to a typewriter and a grudge against Marina? Miss Marple thinks about the suspects. Ella Zielinski, Marina's assistant, is a natural fit. She's always at Gossington Hall. With access to Marina's mail and a typewriter in the study, Ella's loyalty seems unshakable, but Miss Marple senses a hidden edge, a resentment that bubbles beneath her efficiency. Could Ella be playing a double game, protecting Marina while tormenting her? Then there's Jason Rudd, whose devotion to his wife feels almost too perfect. As a director, he's a master of staging scenes. Could he be orchestrating this to control Marina's fragile state? The Hollywood crowd is suspect too. Lola Brewster, the rival actress, has the motive of jealousy. Ardwick Fenn, the producer, carries the weight of financial ruin. Haley Preston, the screenwriter, might see the letters as revenge for past humiliations. But Miss Marple doesn't rule out the villagers. Arthur Badcock, Heather's husband, is too quiet, his grief too restrained. Could he be hiding a deeper motive tied to his wife's death? The investigation takes a twist when Miss Marple learns more about the strange visitor seen near Gossington Hall before the party. The village baker, Mr. Thomas, describes a man in a dark coat lingering near the manor's gates, carrying a small parcel. Was he delivering the letters or something more dangerous, like the cyanide? Miss Marple visits the post office, where Mrs. Mead confirms that no one's noticed unusual mail, but typewriters aren't rare. The vicarage has one, as does the Women's Institute and Gossington Hall itself. This widens the net, but Miss Marple's undeterred. She thinks about the letters' tone: personal, vindictive, almost intimate. Whoever wrote them knows Marina well, perhaps from her Hollywood days, or has studied her closely in St. Mary Mead. A chilling detail emerges when Miss Marple speaks to Gladys. It's the maid who's been eavesdropping on the Hollywood set. Gladys, nervous but eager to help, admits she saw Ella Zielinski typing something late at night in the study, her face tense. "She said it was work for Miss Gregg," Gladys whispers, "but she hid the paper when I came in." Miss Marple's mind sharpens. Ella's access to Marina's life makes her a prime suspect, but the old sleuth knows better than to jump. 2 conclusions. She recalls a case where anonymous letters were a red herring, meant to distract from the real crime. Could the letters be a ploy to shift focus from Heather's murder? Or are they a warning of more to come? The phrase "the mirror cracks" sticks with her, suggesting a moment of shattering revelation, perhaps tied to Marina's reaction to Heather's Bermuda story. Miss Marple revisits that story in her mind. Heather's tale of meeting Marina in Bermuda, sick with the flu, but determined to get an autograph, triggered Marina's frozen moment at the party. Miss Marple wonders if the letters in Heather's story are connected. Did Heather, in her chatter, mention something, a person, a place that linked to Marina's secret past? Perhaps the child Marina lost, or a scandal buried in Hollywood. Miss Marple thinks about the cyanide, a poison that requires knowledge and access. Film studios with their chemical stores could be a source, but so could a gardener's shed. Like Arthur Badcock's, she remembers the weed killer bottle, its faded label a quiet threat. Arthur's calm demeanor keeps nagging at her to calm. For a grieving widower, or just his nature, the village is a tangle of nerves now. At the market, Miss Marple overhears whispers about Marina's curse. As if her arrival brought death to St. Mary Mead, the vicar, trying to quell rumors, speaks of unity, but his eyes are troubled. Miss Marple notices he avoids mentioning Heather directly, as if the topic is too raw. Inspector Craddock, meanwhile, is chasing leads but getting nowhere. He's interviewed the Hollywood guests, but their alibis are tight, and the villagers saw nothing concrete. Miss Marple, however, thrives on the intangible. She thinks about the letter's timing, starting just before the party, escalating after Heather's death. Are they meant to push Marina to the edge, or to scare someone else into silence? Strange visitor looms large in her mind, a figure who might tie the village to Marina's past. Let's pause on the suspects. Ella Zielinski's late-night typing raises red flags, but her motive is unclear. Jealousy, betrayal, or something deeper? Jason Rudd's control over Marina's life feels suspicious, especially with his access to her mail. The Hollywood trio Lola Ardwick, Fenn carry grudges that could turn deadly. Arthur Badcock's quiet grief hides something, perhaps a secret Heather shared. And the visitor? Could he be a hired hand, delivering threats or poison? Miss Marple knows the letters are a window into the killer's mind, and she's close to cracking it. She thinks about human nature, how fear and guilt reveal themselves in small ways, a glance, a pause. A letter typed in the dead of night. Here's a tip to stay in the detective's shoes. Focus on the letter's tone. That poetic taunt, the mirror cracks, and so will you, is personal, almost obsessive. Try imagining who knows Marina well enough to twist the knife like this. Is it someone from her past, or a villager hiding in plain sight? Jot down one suspect and one reason the letters might serve their purpose: fear, distraction, or revenge. The suspense is electric, and Miss Marple's closing in. In the next chapter, we'll follow her as she digs into the Bermuda connection, chasing the truth behind Heather's story and Marina's reaction. What's your theory on the letters? Author. Drop it in the comments, and let's keep unraveling this deadly puzzle. Like and subscribe to catch the next twist in this chilling mystery. The air in St. Mary Mead is thick with unease, as the poison that killed Heather Badcock continues to haunt the village. Miss Jane Marple, with her quiet brilliance, has been unraveling the threads of Marina Gregg's shadowed past and the cryptic anonymous letters that taunt her. But the heart of the mystery keeps circling back to that moment at the Gossington Hall party, when Heather's story about meeting Marina in Bermuda froze the actress in a moment of raw fear. In this chapter, we're diving into the Bermuda connection, chasing the truth behind Heather's seemingly innocent anecdote and why it struck such a nerve. Was Heather's tale a harmless memory, or did it unearth a secret worth killing for? The suspense is a tightening coil. Let's follow Miss Marple as she pieces together a puzzle that spans continents and decades. Miss Marple sits by her fireside, her knitting needles moving rhythmically, but her mind is far away, sifting through the details of Heather's story. At the party, Heather had bubbled with excitement, recounting how she'd met Marina years ago at a charity event in Bermuda. She'd been sick with the flu, she said, but dragged herself out of bed to get Marina's autograph, pushing through a crowd to reach her idol. It was this story that made Marina freeze, her face a mask of dread, as if Heather's words had ripped open an old wound. Miss Marple knows that reaction wasn't random, it's the cornerstone of the murder. What was it about Bermuda, or Heather's encounter, that sent Marina into such a panic? Could it be tied to the anonymous letters, with their chilling taunts? Of a cracked mirror? Miss Marple's determined to find out, to unravel the Bermuda connection. Miss Marple starts with her usual method: quiet conversations that yield more than her companions realize. She visits Mrs. Hartnell at the Women's Institute, who'd heard Heather's story repeated ad nauseum. She was so proud of meeting Marina, Mrs. Hartnell says, stirring her tea. Here they said she was feverish, nearly fainted, but wouldn't miss it for the world. Even mentioned a nurse who helped her that day, somebody important, she said, but I didn't catch the name. Miss Marple's ears prick up. A nurse. That's new. She presses gently, but Mrs. Hartnell's memory is fuzzy. Still, the detail sticks. A nurse in Bermuda, connected to Heather's meeting with Marina. Could this person be the key? Someone who knew something about Marina's past? Miss Marple's next stop is Cherry Baker, her young housekeeper, who's been digging into village gossip. Cherry's heard whispers about Heather's Bermuda trip, gleaned from chats at the village shop. Apparently, Heather had mentioned a funny coincidence about that day. Something about seeing someone unexpected at the event. She didn't say who, Cherry admits, but she got all secretive, like it was a big deal. In Miss Marple's mind races. A coincidence, a nurse, a meeting with Marina. What did Heather stumble into? She thinks about Marina's past, the lost child, the breakdown, the Hollywood enemies. Could Heather have met someone in Bermuda, tied to Marina's secret, a doctor, for a family member, or even the child herself, now grown? The thought sends a chill through her. The investigation takes a darker turn when Miss Marple revisits Arthur Badcock, Heather's widower. She finds him in his garden, clipping hedges with a mechanical precision that feels like a shield. She asks about Heather's Bermuda story, keeping her tone light. Arthur's face tightens, his hands pausing on the shears. She loved telling. That one, he says curtly. Just a silly fan moment. But Miss Marple notices his knuckles whiten, his eyes avoiding hers. She mentions the nurse Heather spoke of, and Arthur's reaction is subtle, but telling. A quick glance toward the shed, where that bottle of weed killer still sits. Miss Marple doesn't press, but she's certain Arthur knows more than he's letting on. Was Heather's story a threat to him, or to someone else? Could he have silenced her to protect a secret? Ash! The Bermuda connection deepens as Miss Marple pieces together the timeline. She learns from Dolly Bantry that Marina's visit to Bermuda coincided with a difficult period in her life, just before her nervous breakdown. Dolly, who's been combing through old magazines, mentions a rumor that Marina was in Bermuda for more than just a charity event, perhaps a discreet stay at a private clinic away from prying eyes. Miss Marple's mind latches onto this. A clinic could mean a doctor or a nurse, someone who might have crossed paths with Heather. She thinks about the anonymous letters, with their intimate knowledge of Marina's fears. Could the letter writer be someone from that Bermuda clinic? Someone who knows what Marina was hiding? The phrase "the mirror cracks" echoes in her mind, a poetic jab at a moment of shattering truth. To dig further, Miss Marple enlists her nephew, Raymond West, to make inquiries about Bermuda's charity event. Raymond, ever indulgent of his aunt's sleuthing, tracks down an old contact in the entertainment world who remembers the event. It was a high-profile affair, packed with celebrities and dignitaries, but Marina was the star attraction. Raymond's contact recalls a small scandal. Marina had been unwell, possibly pregnant, and was whisked away by her team after the autograph session. A nurse was involved, someone discreet but memorable, who ensured Marina's privacy. Miss Marple's pulse quickens. Heather, sick with the flu, met this nurse or overheard something sensitive. She might have carried a dangerous secret for years without even knowing it. The suspense tightens as new clues emerge. Miss Marple learns from Inspector Craddock that the police have found a typewriter at Gossington Hall, used for routine correspondence, but accessible to anyone in the household. The anonymous letters could have come from there, pointing again to Ella Zielinski, who's always typing away, or Jason Rudd, who controls the manor's inner workings. But Miss Marple also considers the Hollywood suspects. Lola Brewster, whose jealousy could drive her to taunt Marina. Ardwick Fenn, the producer with a grudge. Haley Preston, the screenwriter nursing old wounds. And then there's the strange visitor seen near Gossington Hall, a figure who might have delivered the letters or the cyanide. Miss Marple wonders if he's tied to Bermuda, perhaps a courier for someone with a long memory. The village is a powder keg now. At the church hall, Miss Marple overhears villagers whispering about Marina's bad luck, as if her presence has cursed St. Mary Mead. The vicar's sermons grow strained, his calls for peace tinged with unease. Miss Marple notices he avoids eye contact when Heather's name comes up, as if he's guarding his own secret. She thinks about the party again. The spilled drink, Marina's shock, Heather's collapse. The cyanide was meant for someone, but who? Is Heather a mistake? Or did her Bermuda story make her a target? Miss Marple recalls a case where a chance remark led to murder, and she senses Heather's chatter was anything but chance. The nurse, the coincidence. The clinical point to a secret Marina's desperate to keep buried. Let's pause on the suspects. Ella Zielinski's access to the typewriter and Marina's life makes her a strong candidate for the letters. But her motive is murky. Jason Rudd's protectiveness could hide a need to control or destroy Marina's fragile state. The Hollywood trio, Lola Fenn, Preston Carey, grudges that could have followed Marina across the ocean. Arthur Badcock's guarded reactions suggest he knows more about Heather's story than he admits. And the visitor, could he be a link to Bermuda, carrying out someone's revenge? Miss Marple knows the truth lies in connecting Heather's story to Marina's past, and the Bermuda event is the bridge. Here's a tip to keep you sleuthing. Focus on the nurse from Heather's story. That detail, nurse helping a sick fan in Bermuda, feels like a hidden bomb. Try imagining who she might be. A clinic worker, a confidant of Marina's, or someone tied to her lost child. Write down one theory about what Heather might have seen or heard, and how it links to Marina's reaction. The suspense is at a fever pitch, and Miss Marple's closing in. In the next chapter, we'll follow her as she confronts the suspects, testing their alibis and watching for the slip that reveals the killer. Who's your top suspect for the Bermuda connection? Drop it in the comments and let's keep this mystery unraveling. Like and subscribe to catch the next twist in this deadly tale. The mystery in St. Mary Mead is reaching a boiling point, with the poison that killed Heather Badcock revealing a web of secrets tied to Marina Gregg's haunted past. Miss Jane Marple has traced the clues from the anonymous letters to the Bermuda connection, zeroing in on Heather's story and Marina's chilling reaction at the Gossington Hall party. Now, the old sleuth is ready to tighten the net, confronting the suspects to test their alibis and watch for the telltale slip that betrays the killer. In this chapter, we're stepping into the tense heart of Miss Marple's investigation, where every conversation is a chess move, and every glance could crack the case wide open. The suspense is a knife's edge. Let's follow Miss Marple. She faces the players in this deadly game and edges closer to the truth. Miss Marple sits in her parlor, her knitting needles still, her mind a whirlwind of connections. The Bermuda story, the anonymous letters, the spilled drink at the party all point to a motive rooted in Marina's past. But the killer is hiding among the living, blending into the village or Marina's Hollywood circle. Miss Marple knows the time for quiet observation is giving way to action. She needs to see the suspects up close to catch the flicker of guilt in their eyes, or the hesitation in their words. Her frail appearance is her greatest weapon. People underestimate her, letting their guard slip. With Heather's murder still unsolved and the village buzzing with fear, Miss Marple plans her moves carefully. Like a general before a battle, her first stop is Gossington Hall, where she requests a chat with Marina Gregg under the pretense of discussing village charities. Marina, pale and nervous, agrees, though her eyes are wary. Jason Rudd hovers nearby, his protectiveness almost suffocating. Miss Marple steers the conversation to the party, gently mentioning Heather's Bermuda story. Marina's hand trembles, her teacup clinking against the saucer. It was nothing, she says too quickly. It's just a fan's story. You know how they are. But Miss Marple catches the strain in her voice. The way her gaze darts to Jason. She probes further, asking about the anonymous letters. Marina flinches, admitting they've shaken her but claims she doesn't know who's sending them. Miss Marple notes Jason's quick intervention, steering the conversation away. Is he protecting Marina, hiding his own role? Next, Miss Marple seeks out Ella Zielinski, Marina's sharp-eyed assistant. She finds Ella in the manor's study, sorting papers with a brisk efficiency that feels like a shield. Miss Marple mentions the typewriter, casually noting its use. For the letters? Ella's face remains impassive, but her fingers pause just for a moment. I type all of Miss Gregg's correspondence, she says coolly. Nothing unusual about that. Miss Marple smiles, asking about the night Gladys saw her working late. Ella's eyes narrow, but she insists it was routine work. Doesn't push, but she senses Ella's defensiveness. Could her loyalty to Marina mask a deeper resentment, perhaps tied to a personal slight? The typewriter, so close to the letter's source, keeps Ella in the frame. The Hollywood suspects. Our next? Miss Marple arranges to meet Lola Brewster, the rival actress, at a village tea room, using Dolly Bantry as a go-between. Lola, all charm and sharp edges, laughs off any tension with Marina. Old rivalries? That's just show business, she says, sipping her tea. But when Miss Marple mentions Bermuda and Marina's breakdown, Lola's smile tightens. Had a rough time back then, Lola admits, her tone clipped. But who didn't? Miss Marple notes the bitterness in her voice, the way her fingers twist her napkin. Lola was near the drinks table at the party. Her knowledge of film set chemicals, perhaps including cyanide, makes her a threat. Is her jealousy enough to kill, or is she a convenient distraction? Miss Marple also tracks down Ardwick Fenn, the producer who lost a fortune when Marina abandoned a film. He's staying at a nearby inn, his demeanor polished but cold. Over a polite chat about St. Mary Mead's charm, Miss Marple brings up Marina's past, hinting at the Bermuda clinic. Fenn's laugh is forced, his eyes hard. Marina's always been trouble, he says, but I don't hold grudges. Miss Marple doubts that. Remembering his financial ruin? Fenn was at the party, close enough to slip something into a drink. She also asks about Haley Preston, the screenwriter, who's been elusive. Fenn shrugs, saying Preston's harmless. Just bitter. But Miss Marple senses Fenn's deflecting, perhaps protecting himself for someone else. Back in the village, Miss Marple visits Arthur Badcock, Heather's widower, under the guise of offering condolences. Arthur is in his shed, the weed killer bottle still there, its presence a quiet menace. She asks about Heather's Bermuda trip, watching his reaction. Arthur's face clouds, his hands fidgeting with a trowel. She loved meeting Marina, he says, his voice flat. Nothing more to it. But when Miss Marple mentions the nurse Heather met, Arthur's jaw tightens. Don't know about any nurse, he mutters, turning away. Miss Marple's instincts for Arthur's hiding something, perhaps a detail Heather shared that made her a target. The weed killer, with its chemical potential, keeps him on her list. The suspense intensifies as Miss Marple pieces together the clues. The Bermuda story, with its nurse and funny coincidence, is tied to Marina's secret. Perhaps her lost child or a scandal at the clinic. The anonymous letters, with their poetic taunts, suggest someone who knows Marina intimately. Possibly. From that time, Miss Marple thinks about the party. The spilled drink, the chaos of the crowd, the moment Marina froze. Was Heather the intended victim? Or was the poison meant for Marina, with Heather's death a tragic mistake? She recalls a case where a killer used misdirection, and she wonders if the letters are meant to confuse, pointing suspicion at Ella or Jason, while someone else, Lola, Fenn, or even Arthur, moves in the shadows. A new detail emerges from Cherry. Baker, who's heard gossip about the strange visitor seen near Gossington Hall. A villager claims he looked like a courier, carrying a small package, perhaps delivering the letters or the cyanide. Miss Marple wonders if he's tied to Bermuda, maybe a contact from the clinic who's resurfaced. She also learns from Inspector Craddock that the police have hit a wall. No fingerprints, no clear motive, just a tangle of alibis. But Miss Marple thrives on tangles. She thinks about human nature, how guilt betrays itself in a glance, a pause, a lie told too smoothly. Each suspect's reaction has given her a piece of the puzzle, but the picture is still incomplete. The village is a cauldron of fear now. At the post office, Mrs. Mead whispers about Marina's curse, while the vicar's sermons grow cryptic, as if he's wrestling with his own conscience. Miss Marple notices these cracks in the community, sensing the killer's presence like a shadow. She thinks about the cyanide, a poison that requires planning, and the letters, a campaign of fear. Whoever's behind this is close, watching, perhaps waiting to strike again. The Bermuda nurse, the spilled drink, Arthur's unease all swirl. In her mind, pointing to a truth just out of reach, here's a tip to keep you sleuthing. Watch the suspect's reactions. That moment when Marina flinched, or Ella paused, or Arthur turned away, those are the cracks where guilt hides. Try picking one suspect and imagining their motive tied to Bermuda. Could Lola's jealousy, Fenn's greed, or Arthur's secrecy be the key? Write down one clue that stood out in this chapter, like the typewriter or the weed killer, and see if you can connect it to the murder. The suspense is unbearable, and Miss Marple's almost there. In the next chapter, we'll follow her as she pieces together the final clues, racing to unmask the killer before they strike again. Who's your prime suspect now? Drop it in the comments and let's keep this mystery alive. Like and subscribe to catch the final twist in this deadly tale. The tension in St. Mary Mead is palpable, as the poison that killed Heather Badcock has woven a web of suspicion that threatens to choke the village. Miss Jane Marple, with her razor-sharp mind and unassuming demeanor, has confronted the suspects, pieced together the Bermuda connection, and unraveled the menace of the anonymous letters. Now, in this final chapter, the threads of the mystery Marina Gregg's haunted past, Heather's fatal story, and the chilling phrase "the mirror cracks" are coming together. Miss Marple is ready to unmask the killer, but the truth is darker and more heartbreaking than anyone expected. The suspense has built to a crescendo. Let's follow Miss Marple as she reveals the shattering truth behind the murder at Gossington Hall. Miss Marple sits in her parlor, her knitting untouched, her eyes distant as she fits the final pieces of the puzzle. The Bermuda story, where Heather Badcock met Marina Gregg years ago, is the key. Heather, sick with the flu, had pushed through a crowd to get Marina's autograph, mentioning a nurse who helped her. That moment at the party, when Heather retold the story, froze Marina in terror reaction. Miss Marple now understands. Through quiet inquiries, she's learned that Marina's time in Bermuda coincided with a deeply personal tragedy, the birth of a child, born with severe disabilities. Due to Marina's illness during pregnancy and illness she caught from a fan, that fan, Miss Marple realizes, was Heather, who unknowingly infected Marina with rubella, leading to the child's condition and Marina's subsequent breakdown. The anonymous letters, with their taunting "the mirror cracks, and so will you," were not just threats, they were a mirror reflecting Marina's guilt and pain. Miss Marple deduces that Marina herself is the killer, driven by a moment of impulsive rage. At the party, when Heather's story brought that devastating memory crashing back, Marina saw her chance. The cocktail, originally hers, was laced with cyanide from a film set chemical, swapped in a moment of chaos when her own drink spilled. Heather's death was no accident. It was retribution for a tragedy Marina blamed her for, a secret she'd buried until that fateful moment. The letters, Miss Marple suspects, were a misdirection, possibly sent by Marina or an accomplice to make her seem a victim. To confirm her theory, Miss Marple visits Gossington Hall one last time. Under the guise of returning a borrowed book, Marina is fragile, her eyes hollow, and Jason Rudd is ever present, his protectiveness now tinged with desperation. Miss Marple gently steers the conversation to Bermuda, watching Marina's reaction. The actress's hands shake, her voice breaking as she murmurs, "It was so long ago." Miss Marple doesn't accuse outright, she never does, but she mentions the nurse, the illness, the child. Marina's face crumples, and Jason steps in, his voice sharp. "She's been through enough," he says, but Miss Marple sees the truth in Marina's eyes. Guilt, not fear, as she knows Jason suspects his wife's involvement perhaps even helped cover it up. Miss Marple also speaks with Ella Zielinski, whose sharp demeanor has softened into unease. Ella admits to typing late at night, but only for Marina's correspondence. Miss Marple believes the letters were likely Marina's doing, a way to deflect suspicion. The Hollywood suspects Lola Brewster, Ardwick Fenn, Haley Preston were red herrings, their grudges real but unrelated. Arthur Badcock, too, is innocent, his guarded behavior a result of grief and confusion over Heather's death. The strange visitor, Miss Marple concludes, was likely a courier for unrelated business, not the killer. The weed killer in Arthur's shed was a coincidence. Distraction from the true source of the cyanide. Marina's film set connections. The village is quieter now, but the weight of the truth hangs heavy. Miss Marple shares her findings with Inspector Craddock, who's stunned by her deductions. He confirms the cyanide could have come from a studio chemical. It's accessible to Marina through Jason. There's no hard evidence. Marina's too clever for that, but Miss Marple knows the actress's guilt is punishment enough. She thinks about human nature, how grief and rage can twist even a good heart. Marina, broken by her child's fate, saw Heather's story as a cruel reminder, and in a moment of madness, acted. The cracked mirror was her own shattered life, reflected in Heather's death, as Miss Marple sits by her window. Watching the village settle into uneasy peace, she reflects on the tragedy. St. Mary Mead will heal, but the scars remain. She thinks of a past case, where a moment of passion led to murder, and knows this is no different. Marina's fate is left ambiguous, perhaps a confession, perhaps a quiet retreat, but Miss Marple's work is done. The truth, as always, was in the small things, a story, a glance. Here's a final tip. To keep you engaged, think about how secrets shape us. Marina's hidden pain drove her to kill, but it was Heather's innocent words that cracked the mirror. Try reflecting on a moment in the story that surprised you, maybe Marina's motive, or the Bermuda twist, and share how it hit you. This mystery's taught us to look closer, to see the truth in the shadows. What did you think of the reveal? Drop your reactions in the comments and let's talk about this heartbreaking twist. If you loved unraveling this with us, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell to catch more mysteries. Thank you for joining Miss Marple on this chilling journey. Stay curious, and we'll see you in the next case.